The dust of the Peloponnese clung to the bronze, a fine, abrasive layer. Days of marching, the constant friction, the jostle of equipment, all subjected the Spartan panoply to relentless wear. A misstep, a fall, or a glancing blow could compromise a critical component. For a soldier whose life depended on the integrity of their defensive system, a damaged bronze breastplate or greave presented an immediate life-threatening problem. How then did the Spartan military machine address such a mechanical failure when miles from any established forge or armamentarium? The Spartans' armor, primarily bronze, was a sophisticated custom-fitted system. Comprising an Aspis shield, corselet, greaves, and helmet, each piece required specialized craftsmanship. Field repair, as understood in later eras, was largely an alien concept to this highly specialized equipment. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, possessed inherent ductility but also rigidity. While it could absorb impact, severe deformation or complete fracture rendered it largely unrepairable with the limited tools a marching army could reasonably carry. Simple hammering often exacerbated the damage. The logistical framework supporting the Spartan army did not prioritize individual field repair kits for complex armor. A soldier's personal kit focused on maintenance, oil for leather components, perhaps a small sharpening stone for edged weapons, tools for bronze manipulation were absent. Instead of repair, the institutional logic revolved around replacement or immediate temporary mitigation. A fractured greave could be bound with leather straps or cordage to prevent further damage and chafing, but this was a stopgap, not a restoration of function. The primary method for addressing significant armor damage was the strategic provision of spare equipment. While not carried individually, a small reserve of standard issue armor might travel with the baggage train, intended for critical replacements rather than routine repairs. The allocation of replacement armor was a function of rank and necessity. A damaged breastplate was far more critical than a dented helmet. Decisions were made by the officers, often in consultation with the logistics specialists within the baggage train. This limited reserve meant that minor damage was often tolerated. The Spartan soldier was conditioned to endure discomfort and minor equipment deficiencies, only failures that critically compromised defensive integrity or mobility prompted a request for replacement. The Aspis shield, being primarily wood with a bronze rim and facing, was a more adaptable system. While the bronze elements could suffer similar irreparable damage, the wooden core was more amenable to expedient repairs, such as reinforcing cracks with leather or fresh wood. However, such repairs were typically performed by camp followers or specialists traveling with the army, not the combatants themselves. These artisans possessed basic woodworking and leatherworking tools, allowing for patching rather than true restoration of bronze. The entire system underscored a Spartan emphasis on collective utility over individual comfort. A soldier with compromised armor was not immediately a liability if the phalanx remained intact. Their weakness was absorbed by the strength of the adjacent shields and men. This contrasts sharply with more individualistic fighting styles where personal equipment integrity was paramount. The Spartan doctrine mitigated individual equipment failure through collective formation and a rigid disciplinary structure that tolerated no complaints. Upon reaching a more permanent encampment or a Spartan-controlled city, a soldier with damaged equipment could finally access specialized armorers. Here, proper reforging, patching, or replacement could occur, restoring the panoply to its original combat readiness. The cultural emphasis on physical resilience extended to equipment. A minor dent or scratch was considered part of the armor's operational history, not a defect. The aesthetics of the equipment were secondary to its functional integrity in battle. This mentality meant that Spartans were not expected to meticulously repair every imperfection. Their training, the agoge, ingrained a stoicism that encompassed both personal injury and the wear and tear of their military apparatus. The individual soldier focused on immediate combat readiness. For severe, debilitating damage to crucial components like the corselet, a soldier might be temporarily withdrawn from the immediate front line. However, outright dismissal from the campaign due to equipment failure was rare, reflecting the high value placed on each trained warrior. The logistical simplicity of the Spartan system stood in stark contrast to the more complex supply chains of larger empires like Persia. Persian armies often traveled with extensive support structures, including mobile workshops capable of more intricate repairs. While effective in its own context, the Spartan approach traded individual equipment repair flexibility for battlefield maneuverability and a reduced baggage train. This trade-off reflected their operational doctrine of swift, decisive engagements. The training regimen itself served as a form of preventative maintenance. Recruits were taught to handle their equipment with care, understanding its value and the consequences of its failure. This disciplined stewardship minimized preventable damage during marches and maneuvers. Ultimately, the Spartan solution to broken armor on the march was not a complex field repair system, but a combination of robust initial construction, stoic acceptance of minor damage, strategic replacement, and disciplined handling. It was an institutional, rather than individual, solution. The focus was always on the collective integrity of the phalanx. A single warrior's compromised greave was less critical than a breach in the shield wall. This military philosophy dictated the minimalist approach to individual equipment logistics. The Spartan system fundamentally differed from individualistic warrior cultures, where personal prowess and finely maintained equipment were often intertwined. For the Spartan, the individual was a cog in a larger, perfectly synchronized machine. Compare this with the Athenian hoplite, who might possess a greater degree of personal autonomy over their equipment maintenance, including sourcing and paying for repairs. The Athenian model allowed for more individual initiative, but lacked Spartan uniformity. The very rigidity of the Spartan social and military structure, while forging an unparalleled fighting force, also limited its adaptability. Their systems were designed for consistency and mass discipline, not for nuanced individual problem-solving in the field. This lack of flexibility in field repair contributed to a reliance on sheer logistical output during prolonged campaigns. Replacements had to be sourced from home or allied cities, creating a potential bottleneck if supply lines were disrupted. As the Punic Wars later demonstrated, empires relying on vast, distributed armies often developed more sophisticated, mobile repair capabilities. The Spartan model, built for shorter, decisive land engagements, did not evolve in this direction. The system, while effective for its era, contained inherent vulnerabilities. A dwindling pool of Spartiate citizens meant fewer hands to produce and maintain primary equipment, and a decreased capacity to replace damaged pieces on a grand scale. The reliance on a dedicated warrior class, increasingly diminished, meant that producing and maintaining this highly specific equipment became a greater strain on Spartan resources over time. This ultimately contributed to the weakening of the Spartan military machine. As their population declined, the ability to equip and re-equip a large fighting force with quality bronze armor diminished, impacting overall combat effectiveness. The long-term rigidity of their system, prioritizing discipline and collective strength over logistical adaptability, became a strategic disadvantage. Other powers embraced innovation in equipment and repair, while Sparta remained rooted in its established methods. The ideal of the unbreakable phalanx, where individual equipment faults were absorbed, worked until the numerical superiority or tactical innovations of adversaries began to break those very formations. The sun sets over the Eurotas, casting long shadows on the fields where young Spartans once trained. Their bronze armor, once gleaming, eventually succumbed to the relentless march of time and conflict. The Spartan soldier's armor was not merely a physical barrier, but a testament to an entire socio-military philosophy. Its integrity was a shared responsibility, its repair a collective rather than individual concern. The question remains, was the unyielding, disciplined, yet logistically minimalist approach to equipment maintenance the key to their legendary prowess, or did it ultimately become a rigid constraint that contributed to their decline?